Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We are monitoring the chat. If you guys cannot hear me, or if I step out for a second because the internet gods are not being kind to me, but they've been good so far this week, I'll pop back on. But Donna will keep everyone informed there if you have any questions about the resources or some of the links. But if you could keep your Q&As in the Q&A, because we're trying to do a good job of keeping those together. On a separate spreadsheet that we can upload to the shared drive. That's you have a link to, and I think Donna is about to put that again in the chat for you to look at. And what we do is we collect your Q&As and we try to put them in a spreadsheet. So if they're answered, most of them are live, but then you'll see what time or when it happened during the webinar, so then you can go ahead and pull the recording and see where that was asked and answered. Also, all our videos for every session that we've had have been recorded and they're on our YouTube channel. There's a playlist. And Donna, I was wondering on the next blog post, can we put the link to the playlist? Because right now it takes us to the website, and you know me, I want everything put, silver platter. So if you could put the link to the playlist specifically
Sure.
to that would be great. I just thought about that last night when I was looking for it, and I said, "Oh, I wonder if we have the link to the playlist." And we've got some other free resources. Just before we get started, just wanted to remind y'all, our free resources hub. We've got a bunch of downloadable resources that I've got to get back into updating. If you can see my screen, we've split them up. Most of them are across the board for all your TRIO programs, but so you definitely can get some SSS stuff here. I'm going to, when I get a chance to breathe, upload a folder that is specific to SSS. So that is free for you to download, take it and make it better, please. It's on our resource guide. You go to our webpage. Something new that we just launched, and I'm fixing to put out the second issue. Don, I know you sent it back to me, and I've got to make some things a little bit more crystal clear on that narrative there for that. But our first issue here, it's called Lisa's Take. Every day I get 5 or 6 questions, and they're usually the same variety or around the same regulations. So I thought, you know what? Why don't I just use some of the questions and answers and the situations, and come up with an overall kind of assessment, my take with the regulations, what I know the regulations say we can and cannot do, and then my recommendation, my professional recommendation. Now, with everything, this is just a recommendation. uh, you know, don't say, well, Lisa said it's Lisa's take, and at the bottom there's a disclaimer, but I always feature the regulations. So we take some real trio Q&As, and I try to break down the regulations and use some analogies because that's how I think. I have to break it down in something I can understand. If I understand it, I don't have to memorize it, right? And then also give you my takeaway. This is what I would do based on the regulations, but as always, you always have to adhere to your agency or your, in y'all's case, your colleges, your institutional's policies and procedures. If they are more restrictive than or more, if they're more strict than the federal regulations, you have to go with that. And a lot of times the federal regulations state you need to go by what is stated in your college's policies, procedures. So it's not always our way. Sometimes it's, well, our way if they don't have a policy, but whoever has the more rigorous policy wins usually. The first episode is on how can SSS staff help the institution without compromising the grant. So this is specific to, this group here that's meeting together for the SSS APR. It's that time of year, right? It's that time of year where you're asked to work on certain things and on campus in different departments. And I get questions about that. So if you want to check this out, it's on the resource page. It's a PDF you can download, and it kind of takes you through the regulations in some situations and how to possibly handle this situation, when it would be okay to help out, when it might be a problem. You get that, this resource, if you want to use it to help you in a situation you're going through right now, or cite the regulation, or come up with some sort of agreement with your institution on when it is appropriate and okay and when it's not. Okay? You don't want to just say flat out no, because it's a cliche. You want to be a team player because you will need their help, and they are providing. The institution is, Even though they may be pulling their 8% indirect, they're still doing a lot of above and beyond things for the project as well. So, just FYI there. This week's issue is about if you're writing or working on a proposal, which some of our upward bound and math science and McNair folks are fixing to do. So if you're involved with that, you may want to keep an eye out for, I think we'll get it out, hopefully if I can hurry up and wrap it up, hopefully by sometime tomorrow morning, issue number 2 on how you're supposed to, according to the regulations, handle the time and effort spent working on a grant, because you can't work on a grant on grant time. Okay, so that kind of spells it out there. Anyway, you're here for the free webinar that we have going on here, and we've also got some free resources here as well. Okay. For other programs, like tomorrow, I think we have Talent Search. Then on Thursday, we have Upward Bound Math Science. And then we have our webinar recordings here from the past and other free webinar recordings that are available on our YouTube channel. Okay, depending on your project. All right, before we get started, I also wanted to share with you, just again, give you a rundown of that's the resource page, but let's see here. I think I lost it. Okay, let me go back to,
Are you intending to share? I'm just seeing you. I'm not seeing anything shared.
did you didn't see the website?
I did earlier, but I don't see it now.
How about now?
Am I?
Can you all see? Have
Okay.
y'all?
Yes, I see it now. Sorry. I think that was
I didn't,
it was my bad.
I didn't know if anybody, are you guys okay? Everyone, okay. So I had shared okay, thanks. I was sharing this. Can you see this now, Donna?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I set it up so it should be following me around because I hate it when I have to keep switching the share thing. So, here is our the folder here for the APR office hours, just to take you a tour of that. We have the webinar summaries. We also have a new visual guide from last week's session in case you kind of wanted to see in pictures when does your year start. In fact, I just had that detailed conversation with someone this morning. Now, can you see the visual guide? I'm jumping around here, but this is the visual guide. Can you see that, Donna?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. All right, so this is something that Leah helped me build from the narrative of what we covered last week. Sometimes you need to see it differently. Sometimes you need to describe it to your staff. Sometimes you want to explain it to your supervisor. And sometimes the words, it's not the most exciting thing to read those instructions. So all we did here is basically take those instructions, pull them apart, put some color to it, stress the bottom line is that field, section 1 field or question number 4B will specifically ask what was the first day of classes. There's a reason for that because that's supposed to be the first day of your project reporting period for the APR. Your budget may run from September 1st to August 31st. No questions there. Or maybe it's a little later in case you were first funded or everyone got pushed back a little this year. But up until about 3 or 4 years ago, it kind of was, well, it's up to you. And some of the software vendors will still say, well, when they get asked, well, when does our project year start for the APR? It used to be, well, you can pick. It can be September 1st or it can be the first day of classes, your choice. That is gone. It is clearly stated and has been for the last 3 years on page 1. They even give you a couple scenarios, which we try to mimic here, when this would happen, why it happens that way. But from now on, I mean, for the last 3 years, your APR reporting period is on the first day of fall classes every year. So it will fluctuate. It will fluctuate, but it was designed that way so that you wouldn't have to have students in a holding pattern if your academic year starts, August 20th, and you've got people ready to go, students, and then you're like, well, no, I can't really count it as a service or as you a new student until September 1st, but they're already there. So some of us would have to go ahead and serve the student and then wait and backdate or forward date the data for service and all that stuff. And this just makes it a lot easier, believe it or not. But anyway, there's examples here, just to talk you through. And it basically is just more of a visual representation of what is listed in the page 1 of the draft instructions for the 24-25 report. And I imagine they will be repeated for the 25-26. Okay. So Donna, do we have any questions specific to anything we talked about last week or to the visual graphics or anything that maybe people can't
Well,
find?
there are a couple of questions. One is about budget and one is about moving funds.
Okay,
Um,
well, let me take those on and then we'll get into the questions. Now you should be seeing the APR section one, and this is the question that they ask right here about when is your first day of classes at the grantee institution. Okay, you see that? Okay, all right. So let me look at the questions here. I think the way I set it up, I can actually read them this time. Okay, during a COE training, it was mentioned that when we ask our program specialists for approval to move funds and other requests, we could add a message at the bottom of our email that states something like, if we don't hear back within a week, we will assume that this has been approved. Your thoughts on this? I don't know about this. I'm going to say it all depends on the situation. If you have been constantly, it depends. If number one, is it something you actually have to get prior approval? Okay. I will upload, and I think we have it already. I think I uploaded in the resources page, Don. It's called something about the OMB or it's a budget letter, but don't bother looking for it. I will upload it, and it lists the 5 or 6 times where you have to ask for prior approval. Overall, the most common one is if you're taking money out of participant support costs, which usually translates to anything regarding student travel or student aid for SSS. If you have money in there that you want to move out, yes, you need to get prior approval. Another thing is, let's say there's a field trip that you want to take that was not scheduled or was not planned or part of your initial budget request at the beginning of the year. I recommend you try your best to get that approval. So if you document and you track, if you've been trying for 5 to 6 weeks, as soon as you want to do a field trip, go ahead and ask for their approval. Even if you have estimated numbers of who's going to go in a budget, get that as soon as possible or put that in because you never know how long it's going to take. So I guess how urgent it would be on the situation that I want to do, or if it's a field trip, if I'm going to miss the deposit or something, I might do it and document that, but I would also have a record of how many times I try to get through to them. And I also would have make sure that my immediate supervisor on campus knows about it and is okay with it. So that's a tough one. That's a tough one because the timing of it. But please double check. I would say almost 90% of the time that folks ask me, do I need to get prior approval for this? And I say, no, you don't. And I'll show you why you don't. Well, they want to see, the business office usually wants to see, well, where does it say they don't have to? I said, hey, I can only tell you the 5 or 6 things that you need to ask prior approval. There's no way I can come up with a document that lists everything else that you can do, right? So hopefully that was a little bit helpful. That it depends on how urgent the situation is and on the actual ask. If you're trying to take money from personnel to put someplace else, no, you don't need prior approval. Your business office is probably going to panic thinking that you're taking funds away and somehow it's going to impact the future. But you usually have everybody on this call or this webinar probably has a lot of excess funds in personnel and fringe that we need to move to other areas. But you see, when you're on the college side, they get nervous because they're thinking, "Oh my gosh, that means less money for a position." Yeah, but the position wasn't filled. I didn't need it, so I need to move that money out. I want to say the only time that you do need to get prior approval for things that are not on that memo that I'm going to list, and it's an OMB regulations. It's actually one of the links that is available right now in our resources where it says OMB quick reference guide in our resources page. Donna or Leah, if you could find that and maybe put that in the chat, it's on the resources page. I think it's under the OMB folder, and it'll take you straight to the link. You know, some folks were placed on, is it called route payment, or some folks were told verbally or via an email for whatever reason. Look, if you want to move anything in your budget, you're going to have to talk to me here in DC. If you receive that verbal directive from your program officer, or if you received it in writing, or if you have been placed on a route payment, yes, that every nickel and dime you want to move from one line item to the other must receive prior approval. No questions asked, and you can't move on forward without it. Okay, but that's just a very small percentage. Um, Most of us can move funds around without prior approval. Look at that memo, and the big deal is you'll probably get more pushback from your institution concerned about it than at the federal level, right? So here's another question. Can you confirm how we know when our budget needs to be used by? Our grant was funded late, but I understood it must be spent before the first day of classes. Well, actually, your budget period runs from look at your GAN, your grant award notification. Typically, it's September 1st to August 31st. Some of y'all got funded at the end of September, and I don't know if they redid the GANs. It was such a craziness last year, right? Getting informed and getting up and running again, trying to hire staff that already moved on, because they didn't know if they're going to have a job or not. So you typically have 12 months to try to spend it. But here's the deal. I have no idea. Does anyone know? Has anyone heard from anyone as to when you can expect your 26-27 GAN? I know that some people have received an email from the department asking those three questions about how much have you spent, how much do you think you need, how much do you think you'll have left over. Now, again, back to the other, but I have not heard of anybody actually receiving an email saying this is what you need to do by a certain date and turn in a budget for 26-27 with 25-26 carryover. I have not. Let me know in the chat. Let us know in the chat if you've received that correspondence. Some people have yet to receive the email asking those three questions, but that's usually when I get a sense of, somebody's working on something. I think it's my gut feeling they're really delayed. So I think it's going to be a couple more weeks before you see something like that. And again, on your budget, it's typically for 12 months, but I was saying that there are certain things that you can't wait to spend the week before the last week, um, like for supplies, everything, and things for students. You can't stockpile. What you don't want to do is look at buying something the last week of August that you intend on using in September or any even now. Oh, let me buy a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm not going to use it until I'm sorry, until the first day of classes start again. That would be stockpiling. So whatever you purchase, you better purchase it now and be able to justify that you started using part of it or all of it or some of it right now, whether it's staff training, student training, that kind of stuff. And also some of your colleges have said, no, you can't, maybe they have an internal deadline. But the idea is that we usually ask to keep some of that money from the first year, which we call carryover, that doesn't get used. We may have an opportunity on the budget request to explain or to show our budget for 25, I'm sorry, for 26-27. And then let's say we have 50 or $40,000 that we weren't able to spend. That's the opportunity to maybe ask by showing where you want to use that extra money. But you have to be okay with the worst case scenario that you don't get to keep it. Okay? I'm not saying you won't, but don't have your like, oh, I can't wait to hire that new person in the once my budget starts again in September 1st, I can't wait to hire that person because we'll use this carryover to hire that part-time person. You don't want to put your eggs in that basket. You want to think of carryover as, you know what, it may be money that I may not get. So let me put it in places like maybe student travel or in supplies that I don't, I'm not desperate to have just in case they say, you know what, you didn't need it, you didn't use it, nobody gets hurt. We're just not going to let you keep it. Okay. So usually your budget you try to spend way before the end of the year. But sometimes you're able to keep it, not always. So you just have to be okay with it just going away. Okay. Anything going on in the chat or anyone receiving the COE said mid-August? Okay, see, I missed that. So I was right? I was said a couple of weeks. I swear I didn't even see this. Okay, and okay, so yes, that thank you. You found that link to the folder with the OMB quick reference sheet. When you click, it's called budget revisions, I believe. You can click that. Also, there's a memo, and I don't know if the memo's in that folder. It says budget modifications, I think, Leah, and it's from 2022. It's an old memo, but the regulations are still valid. It's a program officer saying basically, some of y'all may have heard that you've got to contact us to move anything around in your budget. And the letter says, that's not true. It actually says that. And it says, here are the listing of when you need to basically, in a nice way, I think, when you need to bother us. Sometimes that memo is not good enough for our business offices. They still want us to keep bugging people to get that approval. So sometimes you have to go ahead and play along, but we really have a lot of flexibility. And I'll let me know if you found that, Leah, or if we can do that. But it's the one regulation that spells it out. So before we log off, I know it's somewhere in that folder. I think I even have it on my desktop because I'm always referring to it in that memo because it comes up all the time. And I use it with the other programs too, because the regulation is not just for SSS, it comes from OMB. So it's across the board. It's across the board. Okay. And hopefully you can use that. And again, when it's a change in scope, when you're asking for more money, when you have to switch out directors, director's not here anymore, or if the director's going to be gone more than 90 days, or if the director, all of a sudden, you guys are wanting that director position to go from 100% to like 75%, that's more than 25% reduction in time and effort. That would require prior approval. Plus, the biggie is don't be touching the student's money. Don't take out a participant travel. Don't take away from participant support costs or grant aid unless you ask prior approval to do that. And there's situations where you may need to do that. Okay. So very few, very few. Let me see. I think I have another question here. When we have a workshop set up for our participants, is it okay for non-participants to come in with a friend who's in the program? I'm guessing we just can't give the student the workshop supplies or anything we have spent money on. True. This is where I call it a recruitment event as well. So, yes, depending on if there's not a cost for participant involved, um, if it's something where, you're not, okay, everybody that comes in, I'm going to charge you for this person. And usually it's not, right? Usually you're like, I'm glad somebody showed up and you brought a friend. Hey, the more the merrier. But you know what? You may want to join this program. Let's talk, or here's an application. That's why you always have to have your application or a QR code so they can sign up and say, great, I'm glad you're here, but you need to sign up for the program. I mean, I just, in a way, nicely try to get them to sign up so you can say it's recruitment. And yeah, as long as you're not handing out notebooks or something that, office supplies or office supplies, but usually most of our workshops, so they come in, they sit down and you have a handout or you talk about something. That's fine. Use it as a way to hopefully get that student to join the program. Okay. But you can't take them on a trip or something like that. Right. Great question. Okay, so let's look at the APR now again, and we should be able to, let me see, we have a couple of messages. Okay, yes, I will stop early to make sure I put in the chat that document. It's on my desktop. It's somewhere there, but I want to make sure you guys get that as well. Change in scope when a program decides to go from having a director to associate. Oh, yes, that is a change in scope. In fact, it's not so much a change in scope. Don't worry about that. It's actually when you are trying to eliminate the having a director to associate director oversee the project. That's probably dealing with time and effort. That means you're probably wanting to have less than 100% director or changing the regulations for all the TRIO programs. I'm just paraphrasing, require 100% director unless you get approval to be less than 100%. So you got to get the approval. And then if you're changing that more so, then yes. Um, the big thing is about the director. I know every person on staff for SSS to us is key personnel. If you ask me, my advisors are key personnel because I would be nothing without them out there identifying, recruiting, serving the students. But in the eyes of the department, they consider key personnel the director or the associate director. Sometimes some program officers say, oh, so you're a split director? Yes, I am. Okay, who's your associate director that's 100%? Here they are. Oh, let me check them out. Let me see if they have the qualifications that y'all listed in your grant proposal. Okay, okay. Sometimes they get a little picky about, the associate director too. They usually don't give you any grief about checking out your advisors. Okay. So some people say, well, I want to, I had three advisors. I'm going to go down to two. Do I need prior approval? No, but you need to get approval probably internally from your own supervisor to make that happen. But whenever you mess with the director at all, yes, you need to get prior approval. A change in scope would be if you decide maybe you have grant aid and you don't want to do it anymore. That's a change in scope. Maybe it's hard to think what would be a change in scope. Maybe you want to focus on something, it doesn't happen. So usually we don't see a lot of requests for change in scope. It's mainly when it's dealing with the director or maybe trying to move funds from participant support cost, trying to either don't do it anymore or we have so much money in that category, we need to pull some money of that out, and that's usually the request there. Okay. All right. So let's see here. We were down at the bottom here. I can always come back up. So we'll probably talk about the CPPs today. But I'm going down here. I believe we stopped at, let's talk about field 23. I think we might have mentioned this, but a little bit backtracking on field 23. Do you know field 23 and 24 give people the most grief because it's the most time consuming? Because in field 23 and 24, at least for all your active, cert, and reported students, you need to answer the total number of hours that they were enrolled in, credit hours that they were enrolled in the fall of 2025, spring of 2026, and summer of 2026, if any. So you add those 3 semesters together. And then if it comes out to be 39 hours, then I look here and I say, oh, that's full time because it says at least 24 credit hours. So I go ahead and answer that. I'm sorry, it's a field, yeah, field 23, not 24 so much, but again, 24 has to be done individually. But 23, there's no way for anybody to check if you're doing that incorrectly. So just do your best, but don't spend so much time on it. I see a lot of people really concerned about this, very, very concerned. There are additional instructions in the instruction document about, well, what if they dropped out? What if they started but they didn't? Well, the question is, were they enrolled? You know, what was their enrollment status, their total enrollment status at the end of the year? So just come up with your own own interpretation, but follow the interpretation that what you understand from it based on the instructions and just be consistent. Okay, be consistent. There's no right or wrong answer here. Okay. I will point out that there is something to do with new students. For all your new students, it's the same question. 20 and 23 are the same for all your new students. At the end of the year, they want to know how many hours they were enrolled in total by the end of their first year. So let's say I put full time there. By default, then I must, for whatever I put in 20, must match 23. So that's only the real rule that they have to match when somebody's new. After that, when someone's continuing student, you don't answer 20 anymore because that was by the end of their first year. You go and you update 23. I don't know if you go to Banner, DataTel, wherever you see their schedule, whatever platform you have to go and get that information from. Okay. Let's see. I don't know if we have any questions regarding that. Okay. Then we finally get to one of the, I stated again, I'm going to state again, say it again, that field 18 is my best friend. Field 18, you can ask me any question out there about any student situation. And after you tell me everything that's going on, I'm gonna have to ask you, hey, what was their first date of service? After all that, you want to know that? I said yes, because that's gonna start me figuring out what would be the correct response of what you just told me. I got to go back and ask you what was their field their date of first service. That's gonna help a lot. So that's the first critical field. You want to be absolutely correct there. Okay, for all your students. And once you answer, you can't change it. So then you just worry about it for all your new students because what happened in the past happened in the past. You can't go back and change that first data first service. Well, all this other stuff, yes, it's important. Yes, you'll get flagged. But when we get to academic standing, this is directly 24 and 25 are directly feeding into whether or not you met the objective on good standing. This is where the database is, and this is where all the PE points on the website for the department, when they get your spreadsheet, they pull the answers from 24 and 25 to see if you met your good standing objective. So I think this is backwards. I think you need to answer the cumulative GPA before you can answer whether or not they're in good standing. Are they in good standing, yes or no, or not in good standing? I need to know what their GPA is. And then you also need to double check to see what in your proposal they say is the definition of good standing. What GPA did they use? A lot of people automatically, and it could be correct, say, oh, just at the college here, it's a 2.0. Okay, I'm probably 99, 90% sure. I'm going to say 90% sure that that's the GPA you should use for your project. But some of my clients, they had to actually go with the higher GPA that was considered good standing at the institution. They didn't make it up, but it was part of maybe for the nursing program or probably for the honor roll. Why? Because when they try to use the regular 2.0, or some places have a 1.8, if you can believe that, as good standing for the whole institution. But when they tried to write their grant, they couldn't show a need because there was so many people getting 1.8 or 2.0. So they had to purposely go higher to make sure there's a need. So I've got some clients out there that their good standing is a 2.0 or a 2.75, even though institutional wise for everybody it's a 2.0, but they had to pick specific GPA that was more rigorous to show a need. Well, guess what? They got funded using that to show need, but now payback, they have to use that GPA for this objective. Okay, so those of you out there that are my clients, you can't go back to that institutional one. You got to double check and see what was listed in your proposal as a definition. Okay, and you have to use that. So you got to figure out what's 25 so then you can answer 24. So backwards in a way. Okay, any questions about that? I will say that I've gotten error messages when I tried to put in less than a 1.0 GPA. It will tell me it won't accept it. Even though it says zero, 0 to whatever. So I put a 1.0 GPA, even if it's a zero point 0.8 or zero point 0.5 GPA. It's still not in good standing. So I didn't claim that somebody was doing, got good standing, because whether it's below a 1.0 or just a flat 1.0, it was not good standing either way, but it made the report go through. Okay. Let's see here. But those two fields talk directly to objective B, or number 2, which is good standing. Field 26 is asking what was their grade level at the beginning of 25-26. So sometimes we have to, and see, when you're working on this one at a time in your database for per student, you will want to collect this information one student at a time, not one field at a time, right? So if I'm going into a student's record, one of my active CERT or reported students, I'm setting up the links or multiple screens so I could possibly go into Banner DataTel to pull this data, and get the complete, I guess, work on the APR for each student one at a time instead of jumping around, based on the fields. I do it one student at a time. That's what I would recommend. So I'm looking at what was their beginning grade level at the beginning of 25-26. I can sometimes find this on, I don't know, sometimes it's their schedule, a transcript. You do you figure out where you can figure out what they were at the beginning of fall 2025. And here are your choices. I've had some folks that belong to, are part of two-year colleges say, well, we just use either code 1, 2, or 3. We're a two-year college, so we never use, third year, fourth year, fifth year. And that's fine. Just be consistent. There's no really right or wrong. Just be consistent. And 27 asks, what is their grade level at the end of the year? So again, 26 and 27 sometimes drive people crazy because they're looking at it, they're worried about it. I get it, I get it. But really, it's be consistent, use the same definition, because this may not match perfectly, where you're at. You all decide, hey, we're a two-year college. It's either code 1, 2, or 3 at the most. Hey, we're a four-year college. We're going to use, these. Just be consistent. And the only thing that will trigger possibly an error message is if in 26, for some reason, you might have put that they were a sophomore, a code 3. And then for some reason in 27, which asks what are they at the end of the academic year, you put that they were first year. So you can't go backwards. You can't go backwards in time. So 26, whatever you put there either has to remain, like if you put code number 1, first year never attended, then at least then it has to be, it almost has to be in field number 27, it has to be 2, their first year. Okay. If they were a 2 in 26, then they could stay at 2 first year, or maybe they had enough credits come in or they earned enough where they got bumped up to 3. Okay. Or code 3, which is second year sophomore. Okay. What it doesn't like, and I mean the APR, whatever parameters, they tend to give you an error message if you put somebody who was first year attended before, and maybe I'm at a 4-year college, but now they're a junior because they had credits come in. So it like skipped a grade, like in high school, and it triggers an error. So it doesn't like when you go from first year to third year in the same year. It's okay if you stay first year. It's acceptable to go up to the first year to second year. But if you jump from first to third year, problem, even though it may be true with the credits. So you got to do something. You got to change something to make it work because it only likes to see, it doesn't like you going backwards and it doesn't like you skipping what it considers a standing or a grade level, a college grade level, which can happen all the time. So you might have to be wrong to be right. Okay. So that's 26 and 27. 28 is also something that tends to throw a lot of people off, especially if you're working on your active served and reported students. If I have to serve 140 and I'm doing my APR initially for my first 140, when I get to field 28, all of them better have 8, 8, 8, 8, all the eights. Eights are great, meaning that they're still in the project. Even if some of these 140 graduated in December of 2025. That's okay because if I still serve them, provided them with at least 2 services, even though they graduate in December, I keep them on as active, certain, reported for the whole year. I do not put their date of last service, even though they could have had a last service in December. And it may even say that in my database, but because that student is coded as either a new or continuing student, a 1 or a 2, the system will recognize that whatever's in 28 in the database will be converted to all eights as long as they're still new and continuing. So with all my students that graduated in December, with all my students that I only served for 1 semester because they may have not come back for the spring, and if I did serve them, I'm going to keep them as part of my active 140, for example. And they're all going to have for field 28 all eights because they're still in the program. So when does that date become activated? When I roll over into 26, 27. Then they will be the first ones that I make a code 3 or a code 4, meaning prior year. And now that field in 28 will become active. But in 25, 26, if they were served, and you need them to count toward your active served, reported, funded to serve number, you keep them turned on. Okay. Even though physically they aren't there after December, you keep them on there. And that means for 29, you don't start telling why they left. Because if they're an 8 and 28, then it will expect an 8 and 29, which is not applicable. Students still enrolled, completed, certificate program, graduated, or transferred. Remember, you don't change, you don't mess with actually changing it from an 8 to the reason why they left until 26, 27 starts. You can't be 2 things in the same year. You can't be active for part of the year and served, and then be prior year in the middle of the year or part of the year. Okay. The same thing for 30. 30 is going to want to know, oh, she did transfer. Yeah, I know she transferred in the middle of the semester, but I can't say that because otherwise it will mess me up. So I'll put 8. And then if they graduated, then here we shift over here to your fields that talk directly to your graduation objective. Once you get into 31, most of our students will be eights, no degree certificate, still enrolled at the grantee institution. Those students that do graduate, you need to select either if you're a 2-year college, you've got codes 1 and 2. They tell you, a certificate diploma for occupational educational program less than 2 years. The second one is for at least 2 years. Both of those say they didn't transfer. This may be the one field that if you're at a 2-year college, you may not be able to answer because you're still waiting on trying to get verification of where the student transferred to. So this is the one field for those students that graduated that I may go ahead temporarily and select, where is it? There should be a code there on your database that says no response yet on purpose, so it'll keep bugging me. So I won't go ahead and answer what I think, like, or for sure, I know they graduated. Well, do you think they transferred too? Well, I'm checking on that. I don't know. I said, you know what? Leave it blank and your database will flag you and remind you. And this is the one thing you have to possibly go back in October or November if you can't find out ahead of time, because clearinghouse is acceptable. Of course, a lot of people know about clearinghouse, but clearinghouse is awesome, but you won't be able to verify what clearinghouse gets. I believe, let me know, y'all, if you've had a timing that's a little bit different. They have to wait till all their members that pay a membership to be part of Clearinghouse turn in their official enrollment information after a census date. Now, not every college and university participates or is a member of Clearinghouse, and it doesn't always happen at a certain time. So sometimes it's November before we can verify with Clearinghouse, and only for those colleges that participate. And I don't want to wait that long. So I usually try to do my own self verification in the sense, not self, but the project's verification by communicating with these students that have graduated and seeing if there's any way we can get 2-year colleges, get some sort of the student to either forward you or email you their acceptance letter or a screenshot of their schedule at the 4-year college, or even text you a picture of their student ID. It doesn't have to be something from Clearinghouse. You don't have to wait until November. You could also go with getting, asking the student directly. You just need to probably develop a digital form where you say that I, the director, or I, the advisor, spoke to Donna Walls, and she told me that she's going to Texas Tech and she plans on majoring in this, whatever. And we talked on this day. I mean, it is still allowable to do that type of verification. I prefer third party, but sometimes I can't get that. And I certainly don't want to wait until November and put all my eggs in the clearinghouse basket. So you might want to try to do some of that now while it's still fresh, and following up with the student. If you know, but you want to get them to say they're going there or to give you something that you could possibly use as a receipt, a text, a screenshot of their schedule or their student ID. Worst case scenario, their verbal acknowledgement or confirmation that they're going to university. Okay, so that might be the field that, I told you, oh, you can do 99% of the APR. Yeah, until you get here, because you may have to wait. Now, if you're a 4-year university, it's about if they graduate from your institution. So you got confirmation of that in December, then in the spring, and then maybe you have some students graduating at the end of the summer session. So you should be ahead of the game than the 2-year colleges because they kind of have to wait because they have to see where students transfer to. So that's field 31. So whenever, and again, for those of you that are at a 4-year college, usually it's code 4, usually. But then here we have some other choices. If they, got an associate's degree for the 2-year but did not transfer, or the coveted 11 that they got an associate's degree and they transferred within the academic year, or they got a certificate and transferred as well. So you're shooting for what's positive for you all is 11 and 12. If you want to get credit for both graduation and transfer, they have to happen during the same year. You don't see that so much. It's not really spelled out in your objective, but in the answer it is. It's kind of hints at it when you look at the wording of the objective, But here you're going ahead and it's spelling out that it needs to happen within, the beginning of the next academic year. So you can't graduate in 1 year and then count it if it's a year later, for 2-year colleges. And then for 4-year colleges, you're hoping that you get the code 4. Okay. There's another one that says equivalent to one, I think, equivalent to a bachelor's degree. So that possibly also helps you out. Once you enter a date into 31, if students are not graduating, then it's just blank. Okay. But if they did graduate, you put a calendar, a year, month, and date in 31, and it goes on to tell you different scenarios. You might want to read that, it's real helpful. So if you put that they did, then you put a date in 32, and it tells you the time frame. And it also says, if you don't know the exact day of the graduation, then just use 15 for the day and use your best estimate for the month. But you should be able to get the exact, at least the month and the year there. So 31 and 32 are giving you credit for the objective on graduation and transfer, and graduation only for the 4-year colleges, graduation and transfer for the 2-year colleges. So if you have something for 30, you have 31 and 32, then you're expected here to have an answer for 33. That is anything but code 16. Code 16 has not earned a degree or certificate. You should have entered for everybody who's active, cert, and reported who did not graduate. Field 33 is not asking for their major or their field of study. It's their field of study degree or certificate earned. So everybody is a code 16 until they have a date and you've acknowledged in the previous fields that they did graduate with something. Then you go ahead and pick from this limited list of what they got their degree in, what field of study was their degree in. Really, there's no right or wrong answer here, but I see a lot of people from the get-go put in, oh, the kid's majoring in math. And I said, that's not what they asked. They're asking what the student graduated with. Big difference, right? So for most of your students, it'll be a code 16. And then for everybody else, only if they graduated do you take away from 16. You can't have an unknown. So everybody is a 16, has not earned a degree or certificate until they graduate. Then we get to your first objective. This is where they pull in the spreadsheet world to calculate whether or not you met your objective regarding persistence, right? At the beginning of fall 26-27, participants enrollment at the beginning of 26-27, did they come back? Are they enrolled? Now, some of y'all have told me, you know what? I'm at a institution where we can see that students have, I guess, registered or they're coming back. If you can tell, you can tell. You, of course, want to double check this, but you don't have to wait until it's official. You can go ahead and get an idea or start looking at information ahead of time to see, how it looks, who's coming back. Some of y'all say, well, I don't know yet. I don't know. Okay, so then you leave this blank. I would put no response or unknown until I find out when it's more finalized, right? So this is finally where if I have a student who graduated this year, then I would have either a code 2, which talks about graduation with an associate's degree or certificate and transferred. So now I'm like repeating myself, but that's okay. So hopefully I can say a code 2 for my students who graduated from my 2-year SSS program. Um, or I have where they transferred without getting an associate's degree. Okay, they're leaving, or they graduated with an associate's degree or certificate but didn't transfer, or they graduated with a bachelor's degree. Um, Great. Okay. But for those students that, for whatever reason, didn't come back, are not coming back, then you would put a code 6. This is finally where maybe somebody I lost in the middle of the year because they didn't come back for the spring semester. You read this whole APR and you don't have a clue that something is wrong until I finally get to field 34. And that's your first clue when I put 6 that they're not enrolled anymore. And then I'm thinking now that I know, I go, either they were here the whole year and now you found out they're not coming back, or you lost them in the middle of the year, but you kept them on the books because they were active, cert, and reported, and they did receive services. Um, but now you're letting me know that they're going to be a six. And now I know for 26, 27, that starts on the first day of fall classes for 2026, that I've got to go ahead when I roll everybody over for a minute in 26, 27. This is one of the first groups of students I need to turn off and make them not active, not served, make them reported only, and then make them prior year participant. And actually answer the APR. The first day of 26, 27, I can answer the APR for this type of student 26, 27 because everything's going to be not applicable. So your prior year students should not be, although you may have hundreds of them that you're reporting on only, they don't have a lot of answers that you have to change because they pretty much stayed the same. Okay. It's just that first year where they get turned off where you have to like switch some things over. And that's part of our beginning of year procedures that we work with our clients after the APR is pretty much done. Maybe it's 90% done. Our goal is to, on the first day of fall classes, then take the database in, put it into 26, 27 for a minute, bring everybody who was active and served in 25, 26 into 26, 27, and then we go ahead and watch there while they turn off students they know for a fact have graduated or are not coming back. And then they're left with their continuing students that they say they're enrolled. And then they've got to try to bring them in to see them and provide two services. And then they also put in new students. Some directors prefer to start the year at zero, and as continuing students come in, they reactivate them one at a time. So they always know that when they open their database up for 26, 27, that everyone that's popped up has received at least two services. Not the other way around where we have all our continuing students and we're assuming, oh, they're back they're back here on campus. For sure, they're going to be continuing. Remember, they can only be continuing if they continue to receive at least two services a year. Okay. So when we get down to, let's see, we have a couple of minutes. So 34 is where I finally see if there's going to be an issue with the student in the next year. Or I can tell either it's positive that they graduated or it's negative that they're not coming back. It's number one, they're enrolled at the grantee institution. They continue to come back. Now, here's something that is fairly new, maybe 2 or 3 years old, regarding Field 34. So last year's students, kids who graduated last year in 24, 25, we did the same thing. We said, oh, they graduated, last year. They graduated in May of 2025, did the same thing. Okay, so we're still tracking them. So when we get to our prior year students, last year's graduates will pop up here. And this throws a lot of people off, and I get it. A lot of people get error messages on students that graduated in a previous year when they get to 34. And the error message is, hey, they can't be graduated. Let's say I'm at a 4-year college and the student graduated last year. Everything's cool. Now it's time to do 25, 26. I'm working on my prior year students. And she pops up as an error. I said, but she did graduate. But remember, the question now is I asked, a year ago, I asked what was their persistent status at the beginning of the 25, 26 year. So you answered that correctly. Now I'm asking for the same student, what is their status at the beginning of 26, 27? They cannot hold on to that they've graduated with a bachelor's degree, for example. They have to give up that number five. You only get to claim number five or four. Number four, number five, even number two, those codes. You can only claim them for the year that you graduated. Because then the question is, well, that was last year. What about this year? Oh, they're not here anymore because they graduated, remember? Success last year? Yes, but now I'm asking about this year. So you have to switch it to not enrolled. And that throws people off. They're like, wait a minute. That means, are you not going to count that they graduated? Yes, they are, because you know why? Because you answered it up here. That's why they ask it up here. They asked you. you know, in 31. They asked you in 32, and they also asked in 33. So persistence is from one year to the next. So you only get to claim that every year that you're in the at college, but when you finally graduate, you claim the graduation just one time, and you've got to lose that title or that answer for every subsequent year because it keeps asking about the next year. But fear not, that does not mean that your students' successful completion or reaching the objective of graduation is forgotten. When it is time for that student's cohort to come up, remember it goes all the way back to data for service, which should equal their cohort. When that student's cohort comes up after 4 years since they've been new in a 2-year college, and then 6 years after they've been new at a 4-year SSS project, then it will kick in again. It will remember, but you just can't keep holding on to that graduation title in 34 year after year after year. And that was a switch. It used to be okay to do that. So people are like, what happened? Was I doing it wrong before? No, you weren't doing it wrong. It just came up that way. Yes, Don, I'm sorry.
There's just a question in the chat I was gonna call your attention.
Okay. Which one is it, Donna? Because there's a bunch of them
Um,
there.
Barbara says, I think I misheard something. Please clarify one more time. If a student graduated in December 2025 with a bachelor's degree, you don't input the graduation date until APR 2627, and then they would be prior year?
No, no, I'm sorry. I don't know if I misspoke or you heard me incorrectly, but no, you claim it. You claim when it happened. You claim that. What happens is in field you claim that they graduated, right? You go to 31 and you say they graduated in December of 2025. Everything's great. And also, when you get down to persistent status, you claim, if they got a bachelor's degree, you claim code 5. So everything's great. So the issue is that when you roll over into 26, 27, right? When you start the new year for 26, 27, last year's students that graduated, they have to be made usually prior year participant. So in 26, 27, this student went from being if they were active stored reported student, you claim it. You claim graduation when it happens. Okay. All I'm saying is when you move up to the next year, you have to turn them off as not being active and not served. Okay. And at the end of 26, 27, you leave everything alone except the last field where it says field 34. You can't leave them as graduated with a bachelor's degree and next year because they claimed it. You got to claim it this year, the year that they graduated. Okay. They are prior year participants in 26, 27, but this year I believe they are, if they're current participants, then you do everything like you normally do and you claim it when it happens. Okay. So hopefully that cleared that up. But no, I didn't mean to say that you don't claim graduation. You claim it the year it happens. You just can't keep repeating 34 every single year. You continue to track them when they're prior year participants because it's asking, well, are they here this, are they going to come back the next year? And you're like, no, because they graduated last year. Okay, that's all that means. So it's about field number 34 in subsequent years after they've graduated, the year after they graduated. Okay. I'm glad. Sometimes it's not what I said, but what you heard, or who knows, I maybe didn't mean to say that, but I'm glad you brought that up so we can get clarification on that. Okay, so we'll pick up with codes, and then again, persistence ties in directly with your third objective, which is, first objective, which is on persistence. So we'll pick up next week on 35 and 36 and talk about that and talk about 37, and
Lisa,
I'll ask you some questions. Yes, ma'am.
can you answer one more?
Yeah, sure can.
There was one up earlier in the chat also about fields 26 and 27.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure exactly what the question is. It's what about dual enrollment? Um,
Mm. Okay, what about dual enrollment? Okay, let me see here. Can you post your question in Q&A, dual enrollment? I think I know what I don't know. I don't see the question right now. I can't find it, but dual enrollment, you need to go by the number of, you look at their transcript strictly by that. So 26, if they were a dual enrollment student, I would possibly think if they were brand new and maybe I met with them in the spring semester, dual enrollment, that means they probably already had taken college hours. So they possibly would be a one. It's all about the timing. Did you select that student to be in the program and receive services? You know, well, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter when you serve them, but it matters what they were classified as or how many hours they were, the college said they were at the beginning of that year. So I may not have met this dual enrollment student until the spring of 2026. So what did the college say they were? Okay. And to me, I don't think there's a difference. I mean, dual enrollment means they're earning college credits. So I kind of ignore the high school part and I'm just fixated on, I guess they're probably first year attended before if they've been there, maybe they're a senior and they've been dual enrollment since they were a junior. Okay. And the same thing with 27. I look at their college transcript. How many hours do they have? What does the college, I push it back on the college. How does the college classify them? The classification. And whatever I come up with for a dual enrollment student, I pretty much, the dual enrollment doesn't concern me at all. It just whatever whatever platform you have to use and whatever definitions, just be consistent across the board. Okay. I don't think it actually makes a difference if they're dual enrolled because I'm just looking at their college credits. Okay. Here, I've got another question, I believe. Yeah, some of them come in, and so that would be like almost someone who's so let's say I'm a transfer student. I'm coming into your program with 20 hours, so I would be considered a first year enrolled before, attended before, right? So that's what I would classify that student as. Go by what the college says they are. Forget the dual enrollment part, but how many credit hours have they earned by the beginning of the fall semester of the academic year in which you ended up serving them? Okay. Let's see, is that's answered? I think I answered that live. I think, yeah, live answer. And then we've got something in the chat. I recall from a previous training that we are not to add students that were dual enrolled. From a previous training, not with me necessarily, but again, look at the regulations as to who's eligible. That might have been, I don't know if it was through the department. I know the latest Department of Ed stance I heard for myself, and I have it in writing through the notes that were taken. Whenever SSS had their, you know how the Department of Ed has those technical assistance workshops where they talk about the RFP and people ask questions and people, every single two or three people asked three different ways. So we can work with dual enrolled students. And they said, yes, 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 you can. Doesn't mean you have to. Now, if you'd received this feedback from another trainer, it could have been that that's their preference. No, I prefer not to. Okay. But dual enrolled students, remember the SSS regulations are they enrolled at the institution or will they be or are they accepted for enrollment? Well, actually, they're already enrolled, right? They're considered college students. They have a student ID. The college counts them toward their enrollment. They take tuition from somebody. Sometimes the state pays for it or the student pays for it. So that's the first step, right, for to be eligible. The second step is U.S. citizen or permanent resident. The third step, are they low income, first generation and or disabled, right? And then the last step is, do they need the program? If they meet those eligibility requirements, and you have room in the program, and if you need the numbers, why not? Why not? You may not want to do it. You may not feel comfortable doing it. You may not need to do it. But I'm just telling you from the regulation standpoint, and that's why the department had to say, yeah, you can. Doesn't mean you have to, but you can. And some people say, well, they tend to go other places. So do my traditional students that come in and say they're going to be here forever. They just come for a semester or they don't, I don't, I don't see there being a disadvantage because I don't have 100% objectives on persistence, good standing, and graduation and transfer either. And I need to get my numbers. If I had a waiting list, maybe I would not even bother with that. Okay. But if you don't have a waiting list, if you've got open slots, there's a group and they tend to come back. They tend to come back and they do need your services. Okay. If you struggle with numbers, you got to reconsider that. Look through all the APR. Where would you even know? Not that we're trying to hide it, but where would you be forced to, I guess, admit they're a dual enrolled student? There's not anywhere in the APR to do it. It's just something we're not used to doing. It's wasn't around when the regulations came out 50 years ago, but it's very popular and very common, not popular, but colleges need to do it and according to the regulations you can. It doesn't mean you have to. And some people don't want to go there. I get it. Okay. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Donna, for keeping an eye on those questions. And we will see you all next week. Thank you all. Have a great week. Stay cool. It is now 103. Thank you. Thank you. I hope this is being helpful. I don't want to confuse folks. I just want to help folks out. Okay.